Hello and welcome again to another edition of our Down and Dirty Mini Movies. This is going to be video number 15. Today we're going to be covering hybrid resection, and this is a parking lot demo where we're connected with a network receiver and a Hyper SR, and then a GT robot with an FC5000 running Magnafield version 6.2. And again, it's just a parking lot demo resection, but we're also going to cover a couple of the other resection routines at the tail end of this. So without further ado, let's get started. So I have a brand new job started. It's job number 15. I'm in GPS mode. If you see the icon at the top is GPS receiver. Under my coordinate system, since we are doing a network GPS corrections, I'm going to set this up for a state plane coordinate system. And under the status screen, you notice we have a fixed solution. Just want to make sure the GPS is working before we begin with the robot. Up at the top, I'm going to click the icon and switch this to the total station mode with a hybrid switch. And one thing that's strange, we're doing a resection and we don't have any points in the job. So we'll go to setup and we'll click the standard resection icon. Now we're going to type in a point number to occupy with a total station, and we'll just call this point number 1. And if you want to, you can give that a description and your rod height. Once we have the rod height in here, we'll click next, and we're going to specify a control point to occupy with the rod. Now the gun instrument does not know where we're at the present time, so we're going to manually use a joystick and turn the instrument to the prism. And once we get it close, just get it as close as you can. Might save you a little time. And then you'll hit the prism and padlock to lock it on. Now this is going to be control point number 2. Point number does not exist. We're going to plumb the rod up, and we're measuring it with the total station at this time. So let's click measure. Now once it records this point, it's going to automatically switch to the GPS. We can put in a description at this time, but let's just measure this point. So point number 2 is measured, both optical and GPS. Now we're physically going to walk around the side, give the instrument, a good angle to turn, possibly around 45 degrees. Now we'll just set the rod down. It's not really on any specific point, but we're going to say this is going to be control point number 3 that does not exist. So type in number 3. We cannot do a description yet until we measure it with optical. So plumb the rod up, we'll measure it. Once we have that, while the rod is still in the same exact location, we'll measure it again with GPS. Now this screen just gives us the residuals, but also which point is going to be designated as a backsight point. And we can go right under survey and topo, and we're ready to collect points. Now one thing I'm going to show you here, I'm going to stop tracking, and then I'm going to walk around to the back side of the instrument, and then test out the quick lock or the hybrid lock. So we'll click the hybrid lock and see how fast the instrument turns back to the prism based on that GPS location. And it will lock onto the prism, and we're ready to take our next shot. So the next resection we're going to give an example of is a reference direction. Now surveyors use this a lot when we want to establish a building at a certain place on the ground and then have it rotated a certain direction. Now I'm going to be occupying a point that does not exist. This drawing is after the fact, point number 1000, and I'm going to, basically the first point I'm going to shoot is point number 500, and then I'm going to shoot a point on the line that I want to use for the alignment of the building, point number 1001 that you see here, and it's just somewhere along that line. It's not at any specific distance. So we'll go to setup, and we'll choose reference direction. Now, occupying point number 1000, again, this really does not exist, but I want to show you where it kind of lays off to the side here. We'll give it our height. We'll click next. Now this is a point in the data collector. It's going to be point number 500, and I'm going to set the rod down where I want point number 500 to be, as we see here in the drawing. So out in the field, I'm just going to set the rod anywhere I want to and say this is going to be point number 500. And then I'm going to shoot a point on this alignment because maybe somebody wants their picture window to be facing where the sun's going to come up in the morning. All right. So I measure point number 500, and now it's asking for a point along this reference line. And I'm going to just call this point number 1001 since my base point was point number 1000. And I need to establish what this bearing is between 500 and 501. And to do that, I can quickly just inverse if I do not know the bearing. I put it in 500-501. Now I'm ready to move the rod up somewhere where I want the alignment. I don't really care where this distance actually is, and I'll measure this particular location. Notice that my quick lock's grayed out until I get resected in. My hybrid lock button is what I meant to say. So I have to manually turn the instrument to me if it didn't follow me, and then we'll measure that. And here is basically what your resection looks like. Now next we're going to be doing a resection by reference line. Now a lot of your BIM or vertical construction will use this technique because maybe you can't occupy a point. So we're going to be setting up to the side of this particular location, and possibly you have a footing or a column line that you can see, but maybe you cannot see the points. So we're going to resect by this particular line. So my new point that the instrument's going to be set up on is point number 2000. It's that point to the north. Now I'm going to select a design point for my alignment. Now this is going to be 501 and 502 across the north side of this box. So 501, and then I can choose my offsets that I'm away from this particular point. I am to the right, the point's actually to my left, so I'm going to leave this at left, point 5 foot, and I'm going to occupy on that line and measure this location. Now next, I'm going to be measuring again on the same line, closer to point number 502. And again, if you know the exact distance, you can choose that. You do have to put something in here, but even if it's wrong, I'll show you that maybe or maybe not, whether this distance is important or not. So we'll click next, and we'll turn the instrument to us, have it lock onto us on this particular column line, and we'll measure the second point on this line. Now here it tells us information about this, and we're at the bottom, you see that we're holding left. So your deltas for northern and eastern is 0. If you hold right, it's going to be using the right side, and you can hold center and it would balance that out. Since I knew the distance of being 5 foot to the left, I'm going to hold left and accept this information. And now that 501 is my backside. So that concludes this presentation on the 3 resection types. I thank you for watching, and if you have suggestions for other demo video presentations, please let me know. Thanks.